Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 57th Chicago International Film Festival. This is the first of our morning coffee talks with filmmakers who have films at the festival around different themes. My name is Anthony Kaufman. I'm the senior programmer at the festival. Really excited to have three filmmakers with us, part of our green screen program. To kick us off, we have Melissa Washington, ComEd Senior Vice President of Governmental and External Affairs. ComEd is sponsoring our green screen program. So very happy to have your support. Melissa, before we get started, tell us about your involvement.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And we are excited and very honored to be a sponsor for the 57th Chicago International Film Festival. And we are particularly excited to support the green screen program. ComEd is the electric utility company, that serves more than 4 million customers across the Northern Illinois area. And as a result, we have a front seat to the more frequent and severe weather events that we've experienced and the devastation that they can bring. And we know the cause of this frequency is climate change. As a result, we're particularly really excited about the green screen program and the 4 feature films, the 2 fiction and 2 documentaries that you'll be talking about today at the Coffee Talk. And I also want to commend the filmmakers and excited about your conversation. And last but not least, we're very proud of this important program because it does spotlight climate change because we as a company are committed to creating a cleaner and more resilient energy for our future and our customers and our communities. So again, please enjoy the discussion, everyone, and thank you again for allowing ComEd to support.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Take care, and yes, let's do all we can. It's very interesting because all 3 of you have films that look at very different elements of the climate crisis, and yet do address it in very strong ways, but like very disparate issues, right? So by way of introduction, why don't you guys introduce yourselves and just introduce your film in one line, and then we can kick it off. We can start alphabetically here with Luis, who's returning to the festival. He was here a few years ago for a film called Ex-Shaman, and we're very happy to have his film, The Last Forest. Luis? Oh, there you go.
The microphone. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to come back to Chicago Film Festival. As Anthony told, I have been with Ex-Shaman that has been awarded at the festival. And it was very important for the career of the film. Now the film is at Netflix in United States, Ex-Shaman. So it's open and everyone can watch it. And it's a pleasure to make the United States premiere of my last film, the Last Forest, in Chicago Film Festival. And I'm very happy that we can talk about this crisis that we are having now. We are having lots of crises, sanitary crisis with COVID, and a climate crisis that we see in every country, in Asia, in Europe, in United States. Now in Brazil, we are having a hydric crisis. It's missing water, and we are began to have this year kind of sandstorms like Sahara, but we are a tropical country. We should not have been having this kind of problems, but it's about what's happening now in my country, where the forest is burning a lot, and all the structure of protection has lost money and power from the government. We can talk a little bit about that and about the film that's about the Yanomami people, indigenous people that live in the heart of the forest, of the Amazon forest, and are trying to live in their way, in their holistic and sustainable economic way, even if we are attacking them all the time with gold miners and people who go there to take wood. We can talk a little bit more about that during this talk. Thanks
Great.
a lot.
Okay, great. Thank you. Carlo, want to tell us about you and your film?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Carlo Francisco Manatad, from the Philippines. My film is having its US premiere at the Chicago International Film Fest. It's Whether the Weather is Fine. To make it short, it talks about the aftermath of the strongest typhoon to actually hit the world few years back. International Cold Typhoon Haiyan. So yeah, I mean, if you have any questions later, we can talk more about it, like the drastic effects and how it is with from the system to the people that actually survived and did not survive.
Great. Thank you so much. And Holly.
Hi, thanks for having us today. My name is Holly Morris. I'm the director of a film called Exposure, and it is a expedition film. First and foremost, actually, it's a group of women from the Arab world and the West who teamed up to ski to the North Pole together. And it was the brainchild of a woman named Felicity Aston, who is a veteran polar explorer. So on one hand, it's an expedition film and an adventure. On the other hand, the entire subtext of the project is the climate crisis, because the terrain they're covering is, ground zero for the Arctic climate crisis.
And it's the last time that anyone can make that trek, right? That you're documenting in the film?
Yes, it could well be. Sadly, This expedition is on its way out.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about why that is.
Right. Yeah. So let's just start with inspirations, starting points. I think for some of you, right, the issues that you're documenting are issues that are maybe more personally impacting you individually, and others it's not quite as tangible, right? I don't know if you were there during the typhoon, Carlo, but I imagine that documenting that, if you were there, is quite different than Holly, for instance, who the climate issue that you're documenting isn't quite as tangible yet. Yet of course all of them are just as urgent, so let's start there with your personal connection to an issue that still for so many people is not tangible.
Maybe I would like to open up the conversation, because for me, when I was making the film, when I was actually thinking about making the film, it didn't really start off as something that I really wanted to talk about, like this climate crisis. It was more of a personal experience for me, because for instance, the storm that had happened, which was, I based all the events and even characters in the film, was more of my own journey. And then I realized when I was actually making the film, it had a bigger impact, and not just internals but more of externals. And I feel in a way the film gives a face to how the effects of climate crisis is. It's not only the ecological or even the scientific part of it, but more of how people are impacted by the system that it creates. Because for instance, with my film, it's the setting is basically in the southern part of the Philippines, of many islands of the Philippines, and it's coastal cities of developing countries are more affected, and these little cities are not even given voices in the discussion of how climate change is, because it's always formatted in a way from the developed countries' perspective, which is not much more specific. So, and then I started leaning towards how to go about this personal story, but also saying something about how the crisis would affect everyone.
Let's go to Holly and then Louise.
Yeah, I feel that I thought a lot about how to make a movie that tackles the climate crisis and really will land and make a difference. And so how do you do that? I mean, I do think that I think that Carlo's ideas around it being personal is very important, because I think that that's how an audience can connect with the story. And I feel like if it's a more abstract or academic treatise about the climate crisis, it just doesn't, it for whatever reason, doesn't have a lot of traction in terms of action. So you know, the expedition film that I made is very intimate and very personal, not to me, but to the characters in the film. And it's as much about sort of revolutionizing around personal agency as it is about climate change, I think. And sort of one of my sort of hopes for this project is that it galvanizes young women and girls to take up leadership and become thought leaders around the issues of climate action. And when you see women in the film who are novices, who know nothing about polar exploration at the start of it, and at the end have quite a amount of growth and personal growth. It may sound funny, but I think that if this film has an impact, it's as much about believing in one's own agency to tackle the climate crisis as it is about like, oh, here it is. I mean, we know it's happening. We're at ground zero for the climate crisis in the high Arctic, but if it's abstract and you don't see how it connects to you, then I find it's harder for it to have an impact, the storytelling.
Yeah. So, Louise, what about your relationship, your personal relationship to these climate issues and to the people in the film? I know it's not the first time you've sort of embedded with indigenous tribes in the Amazon.
Yes, my issue is not directly climate change. Right? I'm really passionate to original people from America, the way they live. I have been working with them for a long time, since I has worked before doing cinema as a teacher of Pataxó indigenous people when I was younger. And then I have been working with cinema with them, doing some films. This is the fourth film that I made with them, to them and about them, so that in the meaning that they want that the real image comes to white people, as they say, the not indigenous people, to know them, because the Yanomami, that's the main character, the people Yanomami, who is the main character of The Last Forest, this film. They say this film would be very important for them, so that people all over the world would watch the real image of them and not the usual image that white people do about them. That's very useful to dominate their lands, to explore their lands. So we did this film is for me was a great experience, because I invited the shaman, the great shaman Davi Kopenawa, not only to be the main character of the film, but also to be the screenwriter. And that was their fresh, that's the bring comes, and for me it was something completely new that I haven't been working like that. So I was doing the film, but the screenwriter was the shaman, and more or less the film was made as I was going. I was losing the control. A director, a good director, is supposed to get the control. A good director is that one that has the control of the situations. But in this film, clearly, the film was going to being made as I was losing the control every day, because the decisions they took about the film were so originals, and they need so ways to shoot and to understand how we would mix the stories, because we have in the same film documentary stories, mythological interpretation of stories with dramaturgy and fiction structure, and also the dreams, because original people, they really believe that dreams are true, are real material. For us, it's more or less a kind of fiction material that's good for our psychotherapy. but they believe it's true. So they come to me with the stories of their dreams, saying the film would show their dreams also. As Shaman Davi, the great shaman, said to me in the beginning of the project, as you invite me to be the screenwriter, you have to come to my people, to my place, and stay there and sleep with me and dream. And then you dream, I dream, and then the next day we talk about the dreams we have. Because for me, a film is a dream that lots of people have at the same time together. And this was the way things happen. All the time I was listening to things that I didn't know, and all the time I was trying to understand how I would do something that I didn't know how to do. So the film was made by the lose of the control of the director. And as the climate crisis and climate change for me is completely linked to the things that we do in our day life, the choices we do are the impact that we can have to the climate change. So to show how Yanomami think, live, what are their wishes, what are their desires, is something very interesting because to finish, the European people arrived to America in 5 centuries, and we destroyed 75% of the biomas of this place. And the original people have been living here for 12,000 years in a health way, philosophical and cosmological rich way, without destroying the biomas of America. So we have something about suitable way of living to know with them, to be taught by them. And I think the film is linked to the climate by this way.
Yes.
To
yes,
knowing
yes.
these people.
Yeah. In thinking about your films, and by the way, if anyone is watching now live, feel free to ask a question in the chat and I can pass it on to the filmmakers here. I was thinking of when addressing something as devastating as what's happening and depicted in your films, basically the sort of balance between alarm, devastation, and hope. And how do you feel about sort of that balance in your films, and sort of maintaining that balance, or do you not worry about it? Because I do think, obviously, we are dealing with a creative art form here. And it's not a lecture. Your films are dramatic. Your films are artistic. They're emotional, right? So how do you kind of balance the difficult things that the films are addressing, and maybe a hopefulness or an emotion or something to balance out the feeling of doom? Yeah, Carlo.
Well, for me, I mean, more than anything, with all the effects with the people who survived and did not, basic as the film actually talks about hope and resiliency. Like, I mean, I'm based in the coastal regions, usually where the storms are. Like, I was talking to a friend earlier, in the Philippines, the storms or typhoons are named A to Z. And then the storm that actually hit my hometown is locally it's named Yolanda. So imagine the whole year we already have 25 storms, and imagine people really surviving and really being resilient about it. But more than anything, I think to just explain deeply further about how resiliency is defined, because strength, it's very different from developed countries as defined, because it's not about like us, because we know that we're gonna get all these typhoons and all these things. It's not about just like being strong and merely surviving the disaster, but for me it's more of like really knowing that a disaster is coming and being prepared for it. And that's how I see resiliency. But the thing is, on a wider perspective, we are not in the same, how to say, spectrum of how we are educated in terms of how climate change is. And climate change is a very vast concept. So it's more of like really slowly letting people know more than anything. Of course, I mean, like my film, going back to my film, it's about hope, about survival, about home and whatsoever, but also it talks about the bigger issues that up until now we still don't know how to go about it, especially me in a third world country, differing in terms of how preparedness is with countries outside my own. Yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in?
I'll jump in. So alarm, devastation, and hope. So yes, I will say that all those things are braided together in Exposure, and intentionally so. I mean, I do think that the fact that there were women all around the world, from all around the world, having to come together to work together to achieve what seems an unattainable goal is obviously a metaphor for what we all need to do as for the planet. We did not explicitly say it in that way in the film, but I do think I think that if we live in the world of alarm and devastation all the time, whether it's in a film or in our daily lives, then we're not going to get anything done. So hope is built into the Exposure, and it was really there. And I mean, the last film I did was about Chernobyl, and it was really quite an affirming film. And so I believe that that is where the power can lie in the storytelling, is to have a clear-eyed stance on the issue at hand, whether it's the climate crisis or nuclear disaster, but also to show, and in my case, I'm very interested in unlikely women, unlikely heroines, sort of controlling the narrative. And so there's a path forward in my projects, I hope, and really blazed by the central characters, because they do not fold in the face of crisis. They prevail. So that's how I tackle those three things at once.
Yeah. Okay, good. Louise, I feel like it's also in your film.
Yes, I think the balance between hope and the feeling of devastation and the end of the world was done in my film by the shaman screenwriter, David Copenau. In the film The Last Forest, when we begin the process to decide and to understand what kind of film we are going to do, David came to me and said, we are not going to make a film to show the forest burning. We are not going to show the gold miners using heavy metal. We are not going to some indigenous villages of my people to show sick children in the max. We would do that, but we are not going to do, because we have to make a film that shows how beautiful we are, how strong we are, how healthy we are, because the sick civilization are not ours, Yanomami civilization. It's yours civilization that's sick now. You are bringing the world into the tragedy. So it's time to show how beautiful we Yanomami are, how poetical is our way of life every day, that we are not poor because we don't have lots of products and lots of merchandisings and this kind of things. So he brought the balance, and he said, we are going to talk about gold miner invaders. We are going to talk about the fact that gold miners bring to my children, to my young people that get fascinated to your merchandising products, to the commodities that you have. It makes some young people from my villages intend to live our way of life and go to work with gold miners. We will show that, but the film is going to be much more a way so that you people that are not indigenous can really understand us when we are capable to build our own image and to show you the way we think, the words you use, the way we live. So the balance was done by him, because I think I would have done a more alarming and obvious film that we got, and it's up to Davi that we arrived to this situation that I think it's much more interesting. That was my intention in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I have one more question. I think maybe it's more to Luis and Carlo, and then Holly, we can find a question for you too. I feel like your films, Luis and Carlo, also address. I mean, maybe Carlo most Carlo is like the government's failures, maybe the system, as you said, the system's failures to address adequately these issues and the people. And Luis, it's obviously in the background of your film. I'm wondering, I don't know, I just know, I feel like that needs to be said, right? Yeah, Carlo, can you maybe talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, as I've said, like the backgrounds of each one of us is very uneven. So like understanding would actually vastly differ. And like it comes to a point where even the people in power and authorities don't really know what they're saying. And I actually get to talk about it in my film very subtly, but also very bluntly. uh there's this part of the film where like person in power was actually like addressing people to like follow him, but it came to a point that you really couldn't understand him literally. Like he was speaking gibberishly. The subtitles were like typo errors, something to that effect. And I feel more than anything, it is how they should see, because usually, like in the Philippines at least, it's very centered on the capital, on Manila. The education is centered there, but mostly the people that gets affected are in the coastal ones, and it's not being reached like how we are educated with how this should be. And I do feel it's a big thing. It has been going on for quite a while, and they should have known, like Philippines is a country that will always have storms, and they won't prepare, or they won't have things to say up until the center gets hit. I'm not saying we should actually get to experience this, but slowly there should be a more preparedness in some sorts. And I greatly talk about it because I want it to come across to a point that they see this film and they know what they're doing. They're actually not doing anything about it. So
yeah, Luis, you want to talk about the government a little bit? I mean,
the situation in our country is a tragedy now, because the Brazilian government, led by Bolsonaro government, they decided to take the land from indigenous people. That's their project. They are trying to take the land because there are possibilities of making money with their land, and they are trying to do that with laws and the way they do not protect anymore the indigenous. It's a kind of genocide project to kill the indigenous, or to ethnocide, to destroy the cultures, so that we can get the money we can make there. That's the project. It's a kind of Nazi project. It's a very difficult moment. The film talks a little bit about that, the way it impacts indigenous people. And the point is that, unfortunately, this is happening now, and the world is under a great crisis. So every country, everyone has lots of problems with pandemic situation that makes people not pay attention, don't have time to pay attention in the other situation. So unfortunately, the world is not paying attention on what's happening in Brazil. The forest is burning. Everything is being destroyed now, and we need to stop that. I hope that as pandemic situation makes better, maybe we are going in the direction of, maybe I hope, a kind of end to the situation. The world can pay more attention on what's happening, because for everyone, we need to stop this genocide and the destruction that's going to the last great big tropical frost of the world, because the impact in the climate will be enormous in the next years. And I think the way is that other governments and societies make pressure against Brazilian government so they stop destroying the forest, and also they stop trying to genocide and to kill every indigenous civilization that we have there.
I just like to add, like, I think it's not even about climate change. With any tragedy, you know, even the pandemic that we're facing right now, like government would actually say things about it, like as if they know what they're doing. But when it happens, and that's what we're experiencing right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would add that even though my film doesn't get into this, what's happening in the Arctic is there's a lot of government activity up there, in that as the ice melts and disappears, there's, I would call it a land grab. There's no land grab, but there's a resource grab going on between the US, Russia, and China primarily, as I understand it. And because natural resources are being exposed as the ice melts. And unlike Antarctica, where there's a treaty in place, the Arctic is basically a free-for-all. So just throwing that out there, even though my film doesn't tackle the government's role in this, obviously it's always there.
Of course. And, you know, I was thinking too, Holly, in terms of your film, the fact that you have characters from these different countries all over the world, I mean, it goes to something we were saying earlier, where it's like the solutions may have to come like outside of government forces. I mean, as Carlo is saying, those forces don't seem to quite get it. So it's these individuals, right, who are going to need to come together in some way. I mean, you know, I mean, I don't know how to solve the world's problems, but I mean, I feel like that's kind of like implicit a little bit, you know, so.
Yep, it is. I mean, I think that's part of the message of the film too. Just in that, as the storytelling plays out, you see this in action on a micro level, and can we transmit that to an international sort of global level?
Yeah. I hope we can.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Holly. I hope that you'll get to meet Louise in Chicago. I think you'll be there at the same time. Carlo, are you coming?
No, my co-writer is there. I'm
okay.
back in Manila, so.
Right. Okay, great. Well, perhaps yes, you'll all be able to see each other's films at some point, or your person involved. So yeah, thank you so much. And Louise and Holly, I will see you in Chicago, hopefully. Yeah. And Carlo, I will see you sometime
online,
in the future.
Somewhere.
Yeah. Somewhere.
Thank you, Anthony.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
Anthony.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.